Tuesday, October 8, 2013, and this is a meeting of the Rhinebeck Central School District Board of Education. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the September 24th, 2013 regular meeting?
So moved.
By Mark, seconded by
Second.
Diane Quinteros. Any amendments and changes?
Can you just give me 1 second? I thought I had one and now okay, under audit 4.2, at the last sentence it says, this will be discussed later in executive session. It should say this draft was received and reviewed in executive session at the audit meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay. In executive session of the audit meeting, right, okay.
Most recently, reviewed
In executive session at the audit meeting.
All those in favor as amended? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We now come... Oh, you didn't, I'm sorry.
I abstained, I wasn't here.
Okay, and one abstention. But that motion passes nonetheless.
Did you get the wording there, Meg?
I got it from my...
Okay.
Thank you. We now come to our opportunity for public comment. If any member of the public wants to make any comments, please raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you. Please keep your comments to 5 minutes, and we ask that you avoid making statements of personal nature about individual staff members. But any members of the public like to speak?
I am Mary Krebs, and uncharacteristically, I actually have notes. So I have a few questions. A number of us are here today because it seems very strange that so many of the CLS teachers are retiring in the middle of the year. You must know that parents are wondering what is motivating this, what appears to be somewhat mass exodus. So my first question is, I assume we did not know that these retirements were going to occur and thus there was no budget in place for it. So I'm wondering how we will simultaneously pay for the six new retirees and 6 new teachers come February 1st.
Why don't you make your statement and then...
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my first question. My second point is, each of these teachers has dedicated his or her career to the students, and I personally am in debt to at least one of them for the profound positive impact that she had on my children. I in no way begrudge any of their teachers their retirement, but I do question the timing. And I question that contracts were written so that mid-year retirements are allowed. I'm pretty sure, Deirdre can correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure that professors are not allowed to retire in the middle of the semester, which is equivalent in some ways to what's happening here. So, good news is I'm blissfully unaware of how the union contracts and negotiations, but I do hope that you are considering how to ensure that this, if possible, never occurs again. Because bringing in a new teacher will impact the children. Whether it's a positive or a negative, it will impact the children. And bringing in so many new teachers will certainly impact the entire new school. I don't know if you know, my job, I work for BARD in the Master of Arts in Teaching program, and I teach people to become teachers. So I get to see firsthand, over and over again, how difficult it is to transition from a primary classroom teacher to a new teacher. Many of my students are, in fact, already experienced teachers. So I'm not dropping somebody brand new into a classroom. They're very experienced, and we work to transition them to the front of the classroom and take over an existing person's classroom. My graduate students are in their placements for weeks before they're allowed to take over the planning and teaching of the classroom, and still the transition can be difficult, not just for the students, but for the teachers themselves. I'm wondering how the district intends to manage these transitions to minimize the impact on learning. Where are you looking for information on how to successfully manage this? I'm guessing the district has never had to manage anything of this magnitude before, so where are you drawing upon for ideas on how to manage the situation? Mr. King and his new AP already have much to do regarding the APPR and the mentoring required around that process. So how do you plan to handle this additional responsibility? Some parents have been wondering if perhaps the district will hire the new teachers to start teaching before the retirees leave. I'm not sure that's even feasible financially, or within the union contracts. So I'm just wondering how the transition will be managed. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a comment? Okay, I'll just share with you that the board is also concerned about the mid-year nature of the retirements. We've had years where we've had 10 or 12 teachers retire, just as the natural course of things, but this many mid-year retirements, although you might notice on the agenda for tonight, actually one of them has been adjusted to the end of the school year, but is something that the board is concerned about. It is contractually permitted. But I will turn over to Joe for some comments now. Then later in the meeting, when the board, when we get to an appropriate time in the agenda, we'll have some board discussion of some of these issues. But Joe, I don't know if you want to add to something.
Yeah, I'll add a few things. Thanks, Deirdre. You know, in a perfect world, we'd prefer that teachers would leave at the end of a full term, but this isn't a perfect world, and this is an unusual situation. We were anticipating a large number of retirees this year, albeit not in the middle of the year. In terms of the budget, I'm not sure I understood your question, Mary, about the budget, because in fact, even though this has absolutely nothing to do with the calculus here, there will ultimately be a savings to the district, assuming, and it's a pretty reasonable assumption, that a teacher who's leaving after having been here for 25 or 30 years is leaving making significantly more money than a new teacher, or even a teacher who comes to us with 5 years or 8 years of experience. So budgetarily, that's not an issue. Again, we didn't encourage this to save money, but in terms of your question regarding budgeting for it, our second year expenditures for teacher salaries will be less than what they would have been. So it's not a budgetary issue.
Just a clarifying question.
Sure.
So we don't pick up the expense of their retirement?
The
Percentage of their...
Yeah, well, of course we do, but the savings is significantly more than that cost, whether it's mid-year or end of the year. So that's just, again, it depends on how much experience you bring in a new teacher at, and we'll be looking for the best teachers, not necessarily the least expensive teachers. So that's just, hopefully I answered your question on the budget piece. In terms of transition, in the normal scheme of retirements where people would retire at the end of the school year, there's no transition. Teachers who are leaving finish up on June 20 whatever, and the new teacher comes in 2 months later, so there is zero transition under the normal cycle of retirement. So in fact, in this situation, not that I'm not that this was an impetus at all, but I'm trying to look for the silver lining here as much as I can. We will have an opportunity to have a transition. Would we hire the new teachers X number of weeks before the outgoing teachers retired? Likely not, but we have had situations where we would offer to the new teachers to bring them in at substitute pay for a period of time, a couple of weeks perhaps, to spend time with the teachers who are leaving. That happens and has happened in any number of situations where we've had a teacher leave mid-year on a maternity leave, or for a health reason that's not an emergency. We will typically talk to the teacher who is coming in as a long-term substitute and ask them if they would like to overlap that teacher for a period of time. We're not talking about months, we're talking about a week or 2 weeks, but it's certainly more transition time than we would have under a normal cycle of June retirement and September new teachers. So we would intend to make that available to those teachers who want to come in, and so we do have a plan. We think that given the current job market, there have been for quite a few years, quite a few elementary certified teachers as well as physical education teachers available. I mean, the supply outstrips the demand pretty significantly, and in our discussions, we feel that even making a mid-year hire, I mean, in addition to that, I'm sure you've noticed over the last couple of years anyway, there have been quite a few layoffs statewide, including in this region of the state. So there are some very experienced teachers out there who are looking for work. So we feel that we'll be able to attract a pretty good quality applicant pool. We also have a good period of time before those retirements take effect, so it's not like somebody dropped a retirement notice on us with, with 3 or 4 weeks notice, and we have 3 or 4 months notice to advertise, put together a search committee, generate applications, go through the process that we would typically go through, and hire those teachers in plenty of time to take over when even before the end date of those retiring teachers. So again, I'm not sitting here saying what a wonderful thing. However, I am saying that I think there are some factors in play that will make it something that's manageable, and that we feel confident that we'll be able to bring in some top quality teachers to replace those people who are leaving. I mean, we will never replace them as individual personalities, and we likely won't be able to replace people with new people having 25 or 30 years experience, but I think we'll be able to bring in some good teachers, and probably some with some experience in other school districts. So I think we'll be okay, all things considered.
So I hope that answers some of the questions you had, but I'll just, share from my perspective. I know other members of the board are concerned as well. This is not optimal at all to have mid-year retirements. It will have an impact on children. That's the most important thing, and that is something we have concerns about. So, but I think Joe's trying to communicate that we're trying to react to this in a way that's going to make for smooth transitions. But I know my colleagues also have other comments or questions about how we're going to move forward, so later in the agenda we'll probably discuss that further. Thank you for being here to express your concern about this. It looked like no one else had any comment, unless you want to wait till later in the second opportunity for public comment later. Yes. Oh, the one behind you actually had her hand up. Go ahead.
No, this isn't a follow-up, it's a different topic.
Okay, feel free.
Okay. Hi, my name is Tara Dwyer. I guess mine is a bit separate, and I'm a new parent to Chancellor. I'm also a teacher. I've been a teacher for 12 years. I guess I just want to address the board and kind of wonder or ask you, in the era of Common Core being, a big shift, but, when you kind of get to the meat and potatoes of what it's all about, it's not all that scary. And, with the whole idea of APPR, which is a separate entity in its entirety, I have a question about how, Rhinebeck is addressing the needs of the students who are excelling. And I don't just mean at the high school level, because we have a certain degree of variety that high school kids are afforded, but at the very entry level of their education here at Rhinebeck. We hear all the time how, the United States, it's like a call for more mathematicians, more scientists, more engineers. And I just wonder, how are the needs of those students being addressed? It seems like, historically speaking, that it's one of the things that kind of almost gets budgetarily ignored. I think I might have invented a word, but in creating those supports for the students that struggle. And that's a big shift when you have to, when you consider that teachers are being evaluated based on progress. It's like the kids that are doing well, okay, we don't have to worry about them. Now we have to make sure that we push everybody else up. I'm not making a blanketed statement that anybody has that opinion, but I just feel like we could be doing more for the kids that are really inspired, and to take those very, very young students at the, the primary level, K1, 2, and provide them with an enrichment experience. So I'm just wondering how the board sees that as, a Rhinebeck kind of, how they address that on the Rhinebeck end to make sure that all of those students immediately get grabbed and get inspired to kind of push themselves forward, and specific enrichment, and not just, somebody has to discover down the road that they have skills, but it's like, I'm going to grab you initially and kind of inspire you from a very young age, so that by the time you need to make decisions as a high schooler, as a middle schooler, you've been pumped with that inspiration to make those mathematical, scientific, just decisions in life. So that's my question. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Mary, did you have another comment? Yeah, go ahead. We kind of do public comment and then move on, so.
Okay, totally. I've spent some time, as some of you know, slicing and analyzing our state test data. I truly hope that none of these retirements are in any way connected to the state tests, but I'd be very naive to think that they are. However, I am in no way disappointed in our 2012-13 test scores. Yes, our elementary scores are well below many schools we like to compare ourselves with. I don't know how much time you spent with the data. I spent many, many weeks with it, actually. I'm a mathematician, I like data. This in no way upsets me that our elementary scores are as low as they are comparatively, because the middle school scores, when the children are at an age when testing is more appropriate, but yet still not desirable, our middle school scores are quite good. I hope you're all aware that there's much research that points to our middle school scores perhaps being as good as they are because the elementary school teachers are not spending their time preparing for the tests. Instead, they're focused on age-appropriate, quality instruction. The long-term benefits of that include a deeper understanding of the content, and yes, eventually, better test scores in middle school and high school. The kudos for the good middle school scores should not only be given to the middle school teachers, but must and should be given to the quality instruction of the preparation they received in elementary school. Yes, our elementary scores could be improved if the elementary teachers taught to the test, but over time, you will see, as I can give you lots of data from the schools I work with in New York City, a drop in the upper level scores. Don't fall temptation to that. So, I'm quite disappointed that neither the administration nor our board has spoken out against the state testing. Both Red Hook superintendent and middle school principals have gone on record to discuss their disgust with this topic. Where's our leadership on this? Many people find this shocking, but I'm personally not against the Common Core. I'm against the way it's being implemented. Some of the Engage New York modules are frightening. Did you realize that they want my 5-year-old first grader to study Mesopotamia and the code of, I didn't look it up, Hammurabi? Mm-hmm. My 5-year-old. Okay, she will turn 6 in a couple weeks. I have a PhD and I had to look it up. I couldn't remember, honestly. But more than that, I'm very much against the standardized testing, especially in the lower grades. Can any of you think of a time before the age of 15 that you were required to take 18 hours of written tests over 2 weeks? Yet each of us sits here well-educated and able members of society. We didn't need that to become well-educated. I asked this board and the administration to consider taking some bold steps to stop the lunacy, instead of doing what we've hired and boarded you to do, which is to ensure our children get a great education. Because of this round of retirements is not related to the way we're implementing and testing the Common Core, surely the next round of departures you see will be.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, just a couple of quick things. One is the board did write a statement, and the superintendent together, I think it was emailed and mailed to all parents, that addresses our perspective on the Common Core and state testing. It was also posted on the website. I'm sorry if you missed that.
It's not as strong as I would.
Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, that's another topic for discussion, but that was an effort on our part to communicate a consensus viewpoint on a lot of complicated topics. So again, if you want to at additional time comment or discuss with any of us your perspective on that, that's I totally understand that it's complicated and lots of issues to talk about, but that statement was a consensus opinion on the complicated issues that we did want to communicate to people. And Ms. Dwyer, your questions, I think are lots of good questions, a lot of big questions that I don't think we're prepared to discuss in this format. I would actually recommend if you want to hear a more board perspective, you can attend curriculum committee meetings, or if you want to give me a call or any one of us. But you also may want to first start with Principal King. I think that would be the best place to start about what specifically happens in Chancellor. I know that as a board, we all hope that every child, as they come into our school system, is inspired, regardless of what, where their strengths are or weaknesses, but that they're all captured, inspired, and excited about learning. The more specific focus of your question, I think, would be a conversation you would probably be best to start with Mr. King about that. Which doesn't mean if you'd like to discuss it more with me or myself or
Feel free to contact
or
me.
superintendent. It's just a big conversation to have at this evening. So thank you all for all your really thoughtful comments. I appreciate your being here. We're going to move on now to reports and discussion. We have the 2013-14 fire inspection report.
Okay, this is an annual rite of passage for us, just so board members are aware. Each year, these mandatory fire inspections are pushed up a month. So this year they were in September. I think it was right at the end of the first week of school. Next year they'll be in August, which will be interesting because none of our teaching staff will be here. But regardless, we had a very, very, very good inspection report. The cover letter is in your packets, and for those of you who have been on the board for any length of time, I think you can concur that these are the smallest number of non-conformances that we've had in a long time. So it's on the agenda because it's a requirement for the board to review the annual fire inspection report in public each year. So we're meeting a regulatory requirement by doing that, and we will next August and July the year before that, and so on and so forth. So if you have any questions, please let me know, but you can see that the non-conformances are minor, did not even require re-inspection.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, great. Thank you. Very good. Board committee reports. I think we only have curriculum minutes. Is that right? So we'll just do curriculum. Lisa, I don't know whether you want to revisit anything. I think, Joe, you put in their packet the Science Foundation. If you want to report on that.
I mean, I'm happy to regurgitate it, but I think that the minutes speak for themselves.
Okay. Deirdre, would you like to just briefly review?
So we had our initial meeting of the newly constituted curriculum committee, and we have a very full agenda of items that are carrying over from last year, as well as identifying new subjects for discussion this year, including review of the health curriculum, talking about the LEGO pilot program, how to move forward and learn lessons from what we've already done in Chancellor, talking about foreign language curricula and where there might be space for growth. We're talking now about in the middle school potentially for further language instruction. Project Lead the Way, where expansion is looking likely in the high school. And we did not get to talk about, hopefully we will talk about next time, the possibility of an accelerated science program. for next generation curriculum. We did speak briefly with Principal Davenport about the pros and cons of supporting the college application process through guidance with a digital platform. And so the principal just spoke with us about where the thinking is on that at this point, and is working with guidance to identify the appropriate program along with Mr. Krebs and with Joe. So nothing has been decided about that yet, and I think that's almost everything, except that we will be hearing from Marvin Krebs about a sort of a full report on where we're at with the curriculum, the changes in curriculum, which are massive, and we certainly are grateful for his guidance in thinking through all the issues that are being raised. We also spoke in a more sort of open-ended way about getting a good sense of professional development, what sort of opportunities are out there for supporting Common Core curriculum, and what our faculty have been doing to date. So that's going to be a future conversation.
Great. So it sounds like you guys have a good
We
chat
have
there. Anyone have any questions for curriculum? Any members? Diane?
It seems like this was a really long meeting. Thank
was.
you for taking a lot
It was
of
an
notes.
epic meeting.
It was. It followed up on a lot of things that we started last year. Gateway to Technology now is in its third year, and as you mentioned, it's doing really well. It's fully aligned. The teacher is now teaching another subject in the high school, so I know he has his hands full, but it was always a plan for this to become a nationally recognized program, and I just don't want that to be forgotten.
For the certification process.
For the
right.
certification process.
Didn't we talk about that at
We
our
did
meeting?
talk about it, yeah. It didn't appear in the minutes, but we did talk about
Okay,
that and what the
great.
timeline is, and it sounds like we're on
Yeah,
track.
I think what we need to do, the last piece of what we need to do to reach that milestone is to establish an advisory board with, community members, yeah, right, and Brian McDonald's already started work on that, and my guess is that'll be up and running within the next several weeks. So I think we should be on track to finish this year out strong and then be able to apply for that recognition. Also, if I could use that as a jumping off point, and also by way of addressing one of the comments that was made about Chancellor, we also talked about not only extending the Gateway Technology program into the high school, but also extending it down into the elementary school, and kind of rethinking how we use our science coordinator and that science lab, and moving in the direction of establishing a STEM program at the elementary school. In fact, we just found out earlier this week that Project Lead the Way is piloting an elementary school program. So we're not part of that pilot, of course. We've barely gotten our feet wet at the middle school, but it lets us know that something will probably be available to us not too far down the line. That will provide us with a K-12, ultimately with a K-12 continuum regarding STEM education, so that may address some of the issues that were brought up a little earlier. And the board is also, the administrators, based on our prior meetings conversations, including our adoption of a budget calendar, it's on their radar that I am to present to the board at the end of November some concepts for program and service enhancements for the board to consider in the upcoming budget season, and we've already started some pretty serious discussions about where the high school Project Lead the Way program might go, and what some of the staffing and probably even more critical than that, the facilities needs might be, if and as we start to expand that program into the high school grades. So I feel fairly confident that there will be at least some programmatic requests in that area, if not others, to put on your plate in November for your consideration for the upcoming budget season. So we're pretty busy on that, and have been having some very exciting conversations. In fact, the imminent retirement of the teacher who is responsible for that program at Chancellor right now, we're able to, and his deferring that retirement date till June is actually going to give us some more time to do some planning and to actually figure out what kind of teacher in terms of certification would best fit the needs, whether we would be looking at a common branch teacher, which is what we have currently, or somebody with a more extensive background in science, math. Our teacher here at the middle school suggested we might want to consider looking at a technology certified teacher. Technology certification is a K-12 certification. So there are lots of possibilities out there that are very exciting, and we're plumbing the depths of those possibilities right now. So stay tuned on November 25th.
Are there other questions?
Sorry, I wasn't done.
List of questions.
That was my easy part. Let's see. So follow up to the foreign language as well. So just in response to a couple of these ideas that were thrown out there, you know, it was quoted here that there was very little room in the day for children at CLS now to add foreign language in. But last year, Mr. King specifically said, because the day has been rearranged in the way they arrange blocks,
With specials and...
that there is extra room in the day to develop foreign language. So, and we, you know, Common Core was known last year as well. I'm not sure how foreign language goes against educating the whole child focus. And the comment about the tremendous expense of an infusion program, you know, I've heard people in the community say we don't have a foreign language at the grammar school because it's too expensive. But it's never come to us as a board to say, would you have a foreign language at this cost? We've never said no to the cost of it. We don't. There is no cost out there that we know of. An infusion program, you would have people in your school district who are fluent in that language. With a big turnover in staff at Chancellor Livingston, if this is something we were serious about, we could really be looking for people who are bilingual as well, which would not be any cost. And the point about there's always been an expectation for a third language to replace Latin. I distinctly remember Dr. Davenport saying that he had researched the need for a third language and that we decided 2 was the direction we were going in last year. So maybe you could revisit
Okay, we can
that
talk about
with
that.
him.
Yeah. I'll just clarify the point about expense. That was particular to the Binghamton example, where that model actually meant bringing 4 nationals who were fluent Chinese speakers, establishing them in dwellings and driving them hither and yon. So it was actually very expensive for that school district because it was a very big investment in terms of the human capital. Obviously, looking for bilingual teachers who are already in the country would be a different kind of proposal. So the comments really were just about that example.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions for Kathy? I have a question because I know that Marvin Krebs is going to report to the board regarding curriculum work. I was wondering if what the parameters, if we know, of that report is, because, you know, I think people are interested in some sense of the testing issue that Mary brought up, and I thought made an excellent observation that the test scores improve over time and that the tests at the elementary levels are not necessarily age appropriate. So I don't know whether that's our expectation or whether we're going to be talking specifically, whether Marvin's going to report to us specifically about the Common Core curricular work, or whether we're talking.
The latter is what The
Okay.
curriculum committee had asked him to report out
And then
to the
at
board
another
on-
point, where our pattern has been to have another opportunity that Marvin does, data report, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that comes typically like later in the.
Yeah, typically, he's done a demographic data report during the first half of the year, and then reported out on the state test data, because that, that is kind of collected during the course of the year. He typically has done that in the spring. That's been the pattern that he's followed. If that pattern still makes sense in terms of when, I think the spring reporting time was always planned around when the state report card came out, because the state, some of that data is embargoed, obviously the spring tests aren't, that's been released already by the state. But I think in the past, he's tried to schedule that second data report around the state report card. So I mean, we can talk to him about whether that schedule still makes sense in terms of when the data is available to us, because there's a lot of data there, Regents exams from the prior year and spring tests from the prior year, et cetera, et cetera. But his charge from the curriculum committee for his report, which will be 2 weeks from tonight,
Yeah.
he's planning on coming here, will be specific to the Common Core, what we've done, what still needs to be done, kind of give us the lay of the land as to where we're at with implementation of the Common
Right,
Core.
and I think some of the questions, again, that were raised about sort of the modules that the state has on their website, which have many outrageous things in them, and our relationship to the kind of curriculum changes that we're doing, I think are important questions
Yeah.
that people have an answer
And
to.
this actually came up in our discussion in curriculum committee. Where do parents who want to look at the curriculum go to sort of see what the curriculum is at each grade level? Parts of it are not yet completed, so it's something that will be presented in its entirety eventually to the board. But this is not, this is due to state delays, not to action here, so.
Well, much of the curriculum work that was done this summer will, as those of you who've been here for a little while know, it flows through the curriculum committee for review, then to the full board for approval, after which then it'll be
Right.
put up on our website, so.
All right, well, lots of important stuff. Any other comments or questions for curriculum? Okay, great, thank you. We're going to move on though. We do have, I guess, does this connect to a particular committee, the FAQ for resolving
That would be
school-related-
policy.
Okay,
At a prior board meeting, policy committee had presented an FAQ and received some comments from the board on it. And so, we went back and revisited the FAQ and made some changes based on the comments we had received. This does not require the board to approve it. This is more in the nature of a guideline for the public. But we wanted the board to have another opportunity to look at it, and if members have any additional comments before it's disseminated, we obviously want to hear them.
any comments for Lisa and the policy committee? Well, I appreciate the work that has been put into it. I think it looks good. Now, my only suggestion would be, like, would it make sense to hand it over to some member of the public, someone just go like, okay, you're just like, have no connection to policies in this, in this school district. Does this is this accessible to you? Does it make sense? That would just be my only thought. Get like a look from somebody who doesn't know all the ins and outs to say, because sometimes we can assume things because we do know some of the ins and outs.
As a new board member with not deep knowledge of every policy that's ever been written and all the ones you're going to rewrite this year, I would actually like to take a little bit of time with this. Either I could, or we talked in our communications meeting yesterday about the communications committee. It doesn't, to me, feel accessible enough to the public. It reads a little bit like the policies read, which is cumbersome and oh, well, then I've got it. And, it feels a little bit more like a deterrent. Well, there are all these things that you have to do before you may get satisfied. So I think there's probably a little softening and, not with the policies, but with the language.
Right, just the language to make it as
communication.
accessible as possible.
Yeah, if that's okay.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
I mean,
Sure.
We
Yeah.
did talk about letting the communications committee have a whack at it.
So-
And I think that what we decided is that we didn't want to give the communications committee any more work to do, considering how full their plate was already. But if they want to do it, we're happy to let them do it.
I think there were any number of football metaphors we used to describe the process of
Handing off.
handing off,
hunting.
lateraling, hunting came up quite often,
It feels
yeah.
like.
I would just like to make one observation, though, and that is that it is difficult to create a document that is meant to be useful to people who don't know the process intimately without actually, if not quoting, then at least paraphrasing portions of the policies. And I would be delighted if people can give suggestions or help on doing that, but I'm not sure there's any way to sort of square that circle completely. But I want to see try.
Well, I think that's a great idea because actually the two of you are newer to the board and have, gotten so lost in policy language. So why don't we proceed that way? And then, we can have maybe a goal of the next 4 weeks or something, kind of try to come to some conclusion. But I think that would be helpful. And Lisa, really thanks for all the work that you have put into getting this, going. That was a lot of work.
My
so.
my fellow board members, my fellow committee members are deserving of equal praise, and I thank them both. And Joe as well.
All right, so then we'll move on to the comment section. Does anyone have any good news? Deirdre?
The good news is actually in a way connected to the goals we've set for ourselves. Part of what we identified in our communication, under the rubric of communications as a board goal, is to increase efforts to connect parents with new academic standards and expectations, supporting effective learning in the home in a coordinated effort between home and school to enhance student achievement, which goes back to the concern about student achievement that came forward in our public comment time as well. And particularly impressive to me just over the last few weeks, both with the open houses and now we've hit the 5-week sort of halfway point through the first marking period, have been the efforts of not only the principals but many faculty members in all the buildings of our district to reach out to parents and communicate clearly about changes and expectations for assessment, and really kind of communicating openly about how to support your students' learning, whether that's just an email, sending an article home about helping to think about practicing skills that are important to succeeding in a subject, or information about how to read the grade report that's coming home with the student and communicating about what work has been taking place. I've been very impressed by the thoughtfulness of many members of our district, teachers and administrators, in communicating effectively with parents around these issues. So I just want to celebrate that and say that I hope that we as a board can continue to hold that before ourselves as a goal in terms of effective communication, and listening as well to members of our community to communicate even more effectively.
Very good. I think that is good news, and I'll share that my own personal experience at the high school open house actually just confirmed that sort of effort on the part of teachers and the use of, as well, of websites and email to be, using electronic communication with people. So that's a good piece of news. And thanks also as well to all of you who did speak at the various open houses. I just want to thank you all for doing that. That's an important part of our communication to the public. Any other good news items? Okay, then we'll move on to old business. Have any items for old business? Okay, then we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any other members who would like to comment? Jen?
Hi, Jen Hammoud, Rhinebeck, New York. I want to switch subjects and gears for a moment. I wanted to recognize another, I guess it's a motion on your agenda tonight. Just check this. Don't spend it all.
Don't spend it anywhere.
So I wanted to thank this board for conducting the CELT audit again, based on the recommendations of the CELT audit. Am I allowed to use the name of the teacher who applied for this grant?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I want to thank Ms. Diane Lindenbrucker for applying for a grant to the Rhinebeck Science Foundation based on the recommendations. And what she looked at in the CELT audit was their recommendation to use this area as the nexus for integration of technology across many different disciplines. So she went out and she spoke to many of her colleagues and she asked them, what kind of equipment are you looking for? What kind of professional development are you looking for? How would you implement these kind of things in your curriculum today, not 5 years from now? And she found 10 early adopters from different disciplines: science, ELA, interior design, high school art teachers, social studies, and they asked for iPads, cameras, video cameras, iMacs, Chromebooks, and probably other things, because Johnny Lehane isn't here to remind me of what those are. And all these teachers had very concrete ideas of how they wanted to implement them across many different disciplines. So I wanted to thank her for beginning to implement the CELT recommendations, which directly correlate to your Board of Ed recommendations of 21st century learning, and the Rhinebeck Science Foundation is thrilled to support this kind of a grant, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Jen, and we will be, accepting officially the donation from the Science Foundation, the grant, and, really we appreciate your efforts that make all of that possible. So thank you, and thank you for being here to recognize Diane Lindbroker and as well the other staff that helped put together that grant. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, then we'll move on to other. I have one other, I think that, we want to open up if there's comments from the board about this issue of mid-year retirements and concerns about that. I thought I'd just put out there my own thoughts, but if anyone has any questions or things they'd like to add to the previous discussion. Lisa?
I guess the facts of the retirements are what they are, and so from my own part, I don't see much point in rehearsing them, but what I do wonder about is what may have prompted several events that are unusual in the same year. Joe said that it's not the normal course to have mid-year teacher retirements, and to have several in one year has got to be even more unusual than that. So if the administration has any insight on that, I'd like to hear that and discuss it.
Well, I could speculate. I'd rather not speculate. Everybody makes a decision to retire, and that decision is a very personal decision. And, we have names on an agenda, so I wouldn't want to throw out reasons being speculative and say, well, this might be why these people may be interested. I mean, there's a lot going on in our district. There's a lot going on in the state. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of churn. There are also personal reasons. And again, I wouldn't even mention them. I would mention them to the board in executive session, but I wouldn't mention them in public because I don't think that's either right or fair to to give people fodder for, trying to connect dots that I'm not certain, no one has come to me and given me a reason. They don't have to give me a reason, quite honestly. But, so I wouldn't want to go much further than that, except to say that we recognize administratively that it's a situation that we don't experience every year. We may never experience it in another 20 years, so I couldn't say this is, every year I figure we're going to have X number of midterm retirements. We may not have midterm retirements. Again, I think there's some research to be done in terms of what may have prompted some of these, because my sense is that it's not the same reasons across the number of people who have decided to retire this year in the middle of the school year. I think there's some legal research to be done, for going forward piece of it. But beyond that, I think I would probably be out of line to throw ideas out there.
I may not have made my inquiry clear, and let me see if I can clarify it. I did not mean to inquire, at least certainly not in public session, about individual people's individual reasons for retiring. What I'm questioning, and you may have indirectly answered this question, but I'll give you an opportunity to answer it directly, is whether there is a common theme in these retirements that has larger significance to the district than simply individual people's individual choices affecting their own lives.
I can't sit here and say with any kind of certainty that's a fact. So, as opposed to speculate, I'll leave it at that. But I don't have any indication that that's in fact what's going on here.
Thank you.
Diane?
I wouldn't question anybody's decision to retire. Certainly, most of you people have worked here a long time, and are valued members of our staff. I am baffled and disappointed, I guess, by the timing of retirement. It's certainly not in the best interests of our students. And here in our district, we always try to do the best thing for our students, and this isn't. So I hope, I'm also concerned about the hiring mid-year. I don't think that's the best time to be hiring me also. So I would just, hope that when we go through the process, that if we're not finding what we want for our district, that we don't just hire what's out there at this time. And that we are cautious about the transition. Elementary kids, they get attached to their teachers, and they're going to be losing more than one. So I know, like you said before, in the past, we've had maternity leaves, we've had teachers being able to meet with them in the transition to make that smoother. I hope that we're able to work that out somehow. I think it makes it much easier for the students and the parents. So that would be my concerns.
Anyone else? Diane?
So I share everyone's concerns. I think that we should focus on what we can do, and certainly what we can do, and what Joe will do is continue to do research to find out if there's any common issue that the board needs to know about, although I'm sure it won't be something we can discuss in public session. We can try and think about ways to prevent the scenario in the future, but again, that's probably not going to be a public comment discussion. But we can also address how we're going to replace these teachers. And so a couple of years ago, we had 10 teachers retire in 1 year, and we addressed this conversation of, do we need to do anything different in recruiting 10 teachers than we do recruiting 1 teacher? And if the philosophy is the recruiting 1 teacher is we're doing it to the best of our ability, and that's the way we do it because we think this is the best way, then it doesn't matter if it's 1 teacher or 10 teachers. I would like us to think a little bit more deeply into that, and the Personnel Committee is going to be discussing this in 2 weeks, so please give your feedback. I think if we're really at a critical mass of people, we can expand our radius of recruitment and increased advertisement costs or traveling costs is justified by the amount of people that we're recruiting for. I'm not as concerned about the quality of mid-year hires because there are so many people looking for jobs, but I completely agree if we're not getting the quality, then pay the long-term sub until we get the quality that we're satisfied with. But I think it's crucial that we start thinking about, would job fairs be appropriate, making direct connections with personnel offices at different colleges in New York City and here. Should we expand to the New York Times in addition to the Poughkeepsie Journal? Because we have a real opportunity to impact this school with a lot of teachers at one time, and we should think about what qualities we want in that.
Those are good points as well. Anyone else? I share this. I think all those issues are really important. Sort of investigating, where, are there common issues? Are there issues that we need to address or not? Are they like largely personal? And transition issues, Joe, I think you addressed very well, and I think an attention to that is going to be really important because this does impact the children, unquestionably, and going forward. And are there ways that we can think about restructuring contracts or begin to negotiate about how to do something that would avoid something like this happening in the future? I guess just one thing that hasn't been mentioned that I'd like to just ask you to comment on, Joe, is how we might communicate to parents, because there is stress around this, particularly, all the students are going to be impacted from a couple of the positions, but then some students will be impacted again from a classroom teacher. So I think good open communication, that we're on top of it and doing all we can, and that the transition's being thought of and the hiring process so that people know, what to expect, and that district leadership is on top of it, I think is important. So maybe you could speak to that.
Sure. Well, we actually discussed this a bit at our communications committee meeting just yesterday. And one of the things that I told the communications committee I would do, which I have shared with you, is to prepare a statement outlining the situation as we perceive it and how we intend to go forward. I provided you with a copy of that. I also thought it was important to wait to hear the feedback that we got this evening in the event that there were other issues or questions that should be addressed as well. And in terms of getting that statement or a statement like that out to people, we can do that very easily through our website, through School Messenger, in a very short period of time, like within the next day or so. So I would suggest that would be one way we can put the information out there for people who aren't at the meeting tonight. In a couple of days, they'll have access to a video of this on YouTube, so they can listen to the conversation themselves if they wish. So that's, I think, is the most immediate and impactful way we can put something out there to our elementary school parents and to the larger community before they have to wait to read about it in the local paper.
Okay. And so,
unless there are any objections to us doing something like that, but
is there
we seem to
anything that
think
would
it
go
was
specifically to the classrooms that are impacted? I mean, in a typical year, let's say it was a maternity leave, like how is that communicated to?
My sense is that typically the teachers themselves would reach out to the parents of their students. I know at least one teacher was planning on doing that. I mean, I'll check with Mr. King to see if that's happened, and if it's not happened, suggest that might, and there'll be obviously a more personal touch involved with something coming directly from the teacher than there would be something coming from me or from the board. So I can have that conversation with Mr. King as well.
Okay. Any other comments on this issue? Dr.?
I think part of why all of us have sort of experienced these announcements is saddening and also, worrisome for our children. We're a very tightly knit, small community in this school, and I think everyone sort of reacts with wondering, what does it mean? We want to feel communicated with when we sense there might be some kind of reason that we don't know, and so keeping the conversation open, it seems to me, is really important. I think parents coming and expressing their concerns is vital in terms of us understanding how these changes are perceived, and in the communications committee we've been talking about creating informal opportunities to meet with teachers, which we'll be doing in another week or so, and informal opportunities to meet with any interested families, parents in the community, really in just in a month or two.
On any topic.
On any topic, not just this, but it strikes me that we feel so strongly in this kind of connected way a concern to understand why something like this happens. I think if we can respond to it with really inquiry being on the one hand something we can do, and listening on the other, it can have a big impact, because we all do sort of touch each other's lives and talk to each other, so to do so constructively is really important.
Well, I think you're right. I think just the conversation tonight has been good to flush out the variety of issues that are raised by this, and can help us all move forward confidently by having that conversation. So I think that's an excellent point. On that note, so you mentioned that we had previously talked about like the board meeting informally, having an opportunity to meet informally with parents. And so that's something that could come up under old business, but if that just communications is taking
We're
that
looking
on.
for a
For
date,
dates. Okay.
which I guess we have to run past the board, right, Joe?
Okay.
So by
Okay.
next meeting, we'll have those dates.
We should have the
Okay, great.
dates for
Okay.
like
Excellent.
coffee or dessert or whatever with the board.
Okay.
And we'll need to know which board members would be interested and willing to be at which ones. It's not necessary that all 7 board members be at each one of these, but we certainly want a critical mass of
Right.
board members there to speak with whoever wants to avail themselves of that opportunity. So
Okay.
more information on that at our next meeting.
Okay, so Joe, thanks for all the feedback and information and about this particular issue. And I think it has been good discussion so that we can feel confident moving forward that we'll address all the different issues as thoroughly as we can. So, thank you. Are there any other topics for other? Diane?
I'm just going to throw this out there, not that I really know where it would go or what to do with it, but it's been sort of on my mind since I joined the board and we first came up with college and career readiness idea. And in my head, I thought that part of that could be financial planning for the community of how to get to college, the obstacles of financing college. And I was reminded of it when I saw Dr. Davenport's letter to the parents about scholarships available in the guidance office. And I always thought that maybe we could do some kind of financial seminar for like CLS and middle school, or more advertisement of like, did you know that Bard College or Vassar College or Marist gives away this amount of money in scholarship funds? Because I feel like people don't even know that that money is available, and then they never look at those schools. And the amount of money being given away now is really astonishing at a lot of the top schools. I looked up some quickly, like Boston College, 47% of the students are on grants of an average of $30,000 a year. Amherst College gives away 55% of the students are on scholarship aid. And it's really, so I put it out there. It doesn't have to go anywhere. We have a lot on our agenda, but if the opportunity comes up at some point, we can pick it up again.
Well, I think that's a good topic, and actually there's a member of our community who does financial planning and who has actually just recently approached me about, and I think he's talked to you in the past, Joe, about trying to do more financial literacy programs in our schools. So that's actually a very targeted kind of program that actually, could be time limited, but it's really useful. So that's a good topic. Thank you. Any other? Okay, then we'll move on to our action items. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay, then may I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to accept a grant award from the Rhinebeck Science Foundation in the amount of $54,620 in support of the implementation of the BMS RHS Library Media Center Technology Expansion Grant as submitted by Ms. Diane Lindenbroker as stipulated.
So moved.
By Mark. Seconded by Lisa. Any additional discussion?
I had some questions, but perhaps the principals, when they're here next week, can address some of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I may be able to get you that information
fine.
before then, I just,
Yeah, no, I'd rather do it in public, and
Yeah, that's fine.
it shouldn't hold up the grant. So.
yeah, great.
All right. Well, thanks again to Ms. Lindenbroker and to the Rhinebeck Science Foundation. All those in favor? That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint 2013-14 BMS after-school program instructors?
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions?
I just had a question about what these after-school programs were. It's not specified on the list of, it's just the teachers, not what they're teaching after school. Pretty simple. Just the teachers at what grade level?
Yeah, let me get there. Oh, okay. It's not what they're teaching. There has been a program we've conducted at the middle school for quite a few years. They provide homework help to kids who need the extra help. So each of those teachers is teaching at it, the students at that grade level. And again, they're not dealing with 50 or 100 kids after school. They're dealing with typically small groups of kids. So it's not subject specific. It's whatever they have a need in. And yeah, there's a special education teacher and a math teacher on that list.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, the after-school help, is this like an everyday thing? Is it like, are they signed up for
I
it?
think
now?
it's 2, maybe 3 days a
I think
week.
it's 2 days a week. As they get closer to testing time, it may go to like 3 days a week.
And the kids sign up, or are they just kind of available? Do you know?
Yeah, I think the teachers make recommendations to the kids and their parents who could use that help. But it's not an open, like, drop-in if you feel like you got a tough math assignment. It's targeted towards kids who are having difficulties and need that extra support after school. And we've been doing this for years. I mean,
4 or 5 years?
I was going to guess around 5.
Any other questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve as a final reading and approval of board policy number 9192, parent rights to annual professional performance review, composite scores and quality ratings under education law, section 3012-C.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve a leave request from Stephanie Baird to commence on or about December 12, 2013, with such leave to be taken as paid medical leave through the period of disability as certified by a physician in writing, to the extent of her accrued sick leave, and thereafter such leave to be taken as unpaid childcare leave through the conclusion of the 2013-14 school year on June 26, 2014.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve additional summer 2013 program work?
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the 5th grade whale watch trips to Cape Cod for 2 classes, Palmentier, Blass, and Stuyvesant on June 4th through 6th, 2014, and for 2 classes, West and Barpopolis on June 11th through 13th, 2014.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint 2013-14 CLS before school enrichment program instructors? So moved. Somebody?
So moved.
Anyone? Oh, by Laura. Seconded by Lisa. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that this before-school math enrichment has evolved over many years to take on many different forms. A long time ago, a teacher told me that when the gifted program was eliminated from Chancellor Livingston, this was sort of an enrichment program that was added for all students who want to take advantage of it. And now last year, it's my impression that it was changed to being just invited students who needed extra help in math. And I think it goes to the point that was mentioned earlier by a parent that, students, a lot of students signed up for this class when it was offered to everyone, and both of my kids really benefited from this program. Students excel because they try hard, and if their parents are willing to get them to school before school to do math and their kids are willing to do it, they're going to excel no matter what level they're at. And we were always able to pair them off into ability-based learning in this before school program. It was a wonderful program when it was offered to everyone. So I'd really like to explore ways where we could expand it, and if it's limited by the number of teachers who are volunteering to do it, then I'd like to know that as well, too.
I think I responded to that question today. It is limited by the number of teachers who are willing to come in early and run the program. Period. I mean, it's not a budgetary issue. We don't say, you know what, we'll only hire 4 teachers, so we can only do it this way. 4 teachers volunteered. They take students roughly on a ratio of 10 to 1 because they want to keep those numbers small so they can give individualized attention to kids. So we would have to have a discussion as to what we do to entice more teachers to do that, if in fact we want to expand the program.
So then is it true that, so there are 4 teachers, so if there are approximately 40 kids who there's room for, that those 40 kids are, it's not just first come, first serve, like?
I believe not.
Okay. So maybe that's a discussion we can have.
I'd like to second Diane's point. Both my kids went through the before school math program, not needing the extra help, but enjoying it for learning what else math can do. And I think it would be sad to limit it to just kids that, though those kids need the help.
So that's the tricky part of the discussion, is to how to provide that to everybody who needs it, who wants it, with a limited pool of people who, up to this point, have said, yeah, I come before school X number of days to do this. So that's the conversation. I mean, it's a great conversation. If we can figure out a way to do it, that would certainly be terrific.
Diane?
Joe, maybe you could get clarification. I thought kids had to apply or fill out the form that were interested to do it, but then when it has to be limited, they kind of choose the kids that may need help. I didn't think that they were like asking kids to come. I thought they were just, when they had to narrow it down, that's how they narrowed it down.
Well, since I don't know the fine points of that, we can get the answer, certainly. Brett King will be here in 2 weeks with the other building principals. We can ask him then. We can find out sooner than them if we want. I'm just telling you what my understanding is, but I could be missing a nuance of how that is populated, so I don't, I won't say that what you didn't just say is completely accurate. It may very well be. Just, that's not my understanding, but I could be wrong.
Well, these are good questions to have, and I know that this program has been hugely popular, and if there are budget implications in trying to figure out how to, if it's necessary, expand the opportunities for kids, then I know it's been in our budget for several years, so, you know, we can continue to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't,
You know, there's money there
Yeah.
to be used, it's just never all used.
Okay.
So there's always money left over at the end of the year.
yeah, it's not a case
So
of
it's
we
not a
can't
case
fund
It's
it.
not budgeted
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
Don't limit that.
Well, and these are all being presented as options that are part of an enrichment program, which goes back to the question that did come to us earlier in the evening, thinking in a more holistic way about enrichment opportunities and perhaps taking advantage of other kinds of resources in the community. This is part of one of our board goals, to reach out to area institutions where there might be college students who'd be willing to come and assist, you know, faculty members here. We could explore other options if in fact there aren't teachers who are, you know, able to come. There could be other support.
And, you know, another thing I'd just like to highlight is I've been impressed for years at the before school and
Yeah, it's been great.
enrichment programs at Chancellor, and the numbers of students. I think this precedes Brett King back to
Yeah, it's Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan,
Yeah.
and the number of students that have participated in these programs is tremendous. So
Actually, I think we need to give Linda Clark some
even before
props
Ed
on that, too,
Sullivan
yeah.
and Linda
Great.
Clark, the principal before, to
Yeah.
really build up this program that many, kudos to the teachers, the parents and the kids who take advantage of this big number, so. All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry, except Mark is abstaining. Okay, thank you. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to certify Ed Davenport, John Chemnitzer, Brett King, Richard Zip, and Mark Berg as qualified lead evaluators of classroom teachers effective September 12, 2013, having successfully completed the training requirements as prescribed in 8, I guess, I'm not sure what, and New York,
I'm not even sure what it is.
NYCRR.
It's New York Code of Rules and Regulations.
Thank you, Lisa. We're gonna be here.
Lawyer in the group.
9 feet.
Couldn't quite figure that one.
We need a lawyer for that.
So moved by
No, they
Mark,
could be New York City.
seconded by
Lisa.
Lisa. Any questions? Comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. We have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve modifications to the assistant superintendent for support services terms and conditions of employment effective July 1, 2013.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the list of additional emergency conditional substitute teachers and substitute non-instructional staff for the 2012-13 school year. 2013-14
yeah.
school year.
Yeah.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Second by Lisa. Any questions?
I have a question. In the last few meetings, we've been approving additional emergency staff. I'm just wondering about, I don't know, requirements of the job, like what standards do we have for our substitutes? And sort of, do they all have to be certified? Are they?
They do not all have to be certified. We have a pay scale for non-certified substitutes for whom we require them to have, I think it's at least 2 years of college. Certified substitutes obviously have to have a college degree. In fact, there have been few, if any, non-certified substitutes that we have appointed over the last several years. Another result of the cutbacks, program cutbacks in schools has been that a lot of these people are certified teachers who are out of work. So we have so many certified teachers looking for substitute work that we found ourselves not really needing to hire non-certified teachers. I mean, there are still some who've been subbing for us for years and years and do an excellent job, and we continue to use them. But let's say the vast majority, if not all of the substitutes we've hired over the last several years have been certified substitutes, so they have at least that, they have a college degree and they have New York State certification.
Any other questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous, that motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve an increase of Maureen Mann's position as an English Language Arts Academic Intervention Services teacher assigned to Copeland Middle School from .5 FTE to .6 FTE, effective September 3, 2013.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to approve modifications to the superintendent's terms and conditions of employment effective July 1, 2013.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the revised 2013-14 school tax bills totaling $698 in reduction adjustments and to make the appropriate refund to the property owner if required.
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's unanimous. That motion passes. May I have a motion to adjourn? Oh,
Do we have to vote on this one? 611-2? It's not on the agenda, but we have a page on 611-2.
Rolled into just
Oh.
611.
Because it's part of,
You did
Point one and
substitute
point two.
teachers and non-instructors.
oh, they were
so we
together,
got a
they're
little
together, okay,
together.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you, okay, sorry.
a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mark.
Second.
Seconded by Lisa. All those in favor? We're now adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.